So hello and welcome to this month's Janome Stitch Club UK. My name is Julia Langley and I'm one of the educators at Janome UK, and every month we do this video that's going to try and help you get to know your machines. We look at stitches, we look at feet, we look at various functions and maybe give you some ideas of how to get to know your machine better and get more out of your machine as well. Now, seeing as it's absolutely freezing outside and not too warm in my sewing room either, I thought this was the ideal opportunity to look at some quilting. We've touched on it in some of the projects we've done before, and I have said we'll go back to it. So what I wanted to do this month was look at the even feed, the walking foot, and also I'm going to look at the quilting bar and the longer set of quilting bars as well, and just give you a heads up on how to put it on, how to adjust your machine settings, etc., and a few ideas of things to practice. Now, I am not going to do the Acufeed Flex system today because it was just too much in one video, but I am going, if you're on one of the machines that has the Acufeed system, then I'm going to put a link in the description down below, which will take you to a video that Jayne, one of our other ladies, has done a brilliant video on how to put your Acufeed foot on and how to use it. So I will link that below. So why don't we turn around and have a little look at the walking foot. So this is the even feed foot that comes with this machine. If you are on, I'm doing this demo on the QDC 5270, and this is the foot. Now, it looks quite complicated, and what it's actually doing, it's got these teeth here. Okay, so its name is the even feed, the walking foot. Somebody in my class once famously called it the wandering foot, which is, you know, that's fair enough. Sometimes it does take a bit of a wander. These teeth on top, what they're going to do is, if I take this one off, they're going to work with the feed dogs underneath so that they'll even up the way the fabric goes through. So basically, if you have a slightly heavier duty project, so a quilt for example, or you're using something like velvet or fleece or anything with a pile, fluffy stuff, slippery stuff, and once I've got the foot on, I will demonstrate a couple of different fabrics. What it's going to do is it's going to be able to grab the top and the bottom and keep them going through at a much more even speed, because often those fabrics fight against each other as they're going through, and that's when you end up with it all out of alignment or wrinkled or just not looking flat and neat. So as I say, it's a fantastic foot. It's certainly, I took a long time before I bought a walking foot. They're not cheap, but honestly, it is the best foot you will ever buy. Okay, I'm going to say that now. No bones about it. So the thing to get this on is we need to take off the ankle. I didn't know until recently why this was called the ankle, and then someone said, well, obviously because the feet attach to the ankle, and my mind was blown by that. But yes, why didn't that occur to me? I do not know. So I've taken that screw off, put that somewhere safe. In fact, what I normally do is I will actually put a foot back on it so that it's a bit bigger, and then pop it in here so I know exactly where it is. And then the screw, I'm going to just do a couple of turns. Okay, so that screw is on, because what I want to do is I want to hang this part here over the screw, and this part here, which as you can see makes the action on the teeth, has to sit above the needle bar here where you change your needle. So as I come in, I can make sure that bar is here above here, and I've hooked it on here, so I can then just go in, just hand tight, needle tight, it's because I'm thinking about the needle bar, and then go in with your screwdriver. and do make sure that it is good and tight. You don't want any, I'm shaking the table here, but that I'm checking that there is no movement on here. It's quite a busy foot, so you know it's gonna do quite a lot, and because it's got all of this going on the top, it's going to sound very different to your regular foot. So I've got some wadding in here, and I've actually doubled the wadding in here, so there's 2 layers. Sorry, I'm going to keep knocking this camera, and it's partly because I'm trying to get you in as close as possible so you can see exactly what's going on. So I'm going to drop the presser foot, and then I'm just going to start quilting. Now, if I leave my stitch just on my regular stitch, the serving suggestion on this machine is giving me an actual stitch length of 2.4, and if I stitch at that, it's going along, it's doing okay, and I'm going to stitch 1 row. But can you hear? And that sound, that kind of clicking sound, is the feet, the movement of the feet, the action of the feet. So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it or anything like that. Okay. So have a little look. So it's stitching, but that's a very, very small stitch. So although that's 2.4, if I was doing that regularly, it wouldn't look that small, would it? So this is why everyone always says, when you're quilting or when you're on any thicker material, take your stitch length up. So I'm going to take my stitch length up now, and I'm going to take it to 3.5, which is my preferred quilting setting. I'm going to try and hold the camera. And you can see it's much happier for a start. So if you're on a big quilt, it's going to be a lot quicker. There we go. And let me show you so you can see the difference. Look, straight away. Basically, quilting is top stitching. And with top stitching, you want it to look neater. And the best way to make it look neater is to take your stitch length up. So that looks much better. Check on the underneath and you can see, look, that's definitely the better looking one, isn't it? And you can see already, just by doing those 2 lines, the puff is starting to happen. The actual sort of quilting is starting. So we have our stitch right. We've checked with our, always check on exactly the sandwich you're going to be stitching on. Don't just do it on a random piece of material or something, because you need to make sure that that stitch is absolutely right. As I say, most of the time, if I just take the stitch length up, I tend to use the same 2 waddings, battings in my sewing room all the time. Either the Thermolan if it's going to be for pictures or tables or table runners, things like that, or bags as well. The rest of the time I'm on an 80-20 cotton batting, and I do that mainly because it means I can then stitch all my bits and bobs together to make bigger bits of batting when I need it for little projects and stuff. So, you know, no man left behind kind of attitude in my sewing room with that sort of thing. So I know that this stitch is going to work. If you're on different kinds of battings and waddings though, just check everything is okay. Check that you've got a nice stitch. You might need to lighten up very slightly. If you have it, this is your presser foot tension at the top there. So if you have a look in your instruction book, if you've got this a dial on the top of your machine to adjust it, because what that adjusts is the actual tension on the presser foot here. Okay, so presser foot pressure dial it comes under. So I think sometimes you need to know what you're actually looking for. So come out a little bit so you can see. So oh, up a bit, there we go. So it's up here. Okay, and it's telling you that it can be adjusted. So between 3 and 6 for ordinary fabrics, pressure between 1 and 3 for fine and applique, pressure between 5 and 6 for heavyweight fabrics. So what's mine on up there? It's normally on 6 actually. So what have I been doing on here? There we go. So I'm going to put mine on 6. But sometimes that's what also is going to affect the feeding of the fabric actually going through. So if you have that on your machine, don't forget you can look at that as well. So we've got all the machine bits set up. So marking out, I'm going to just crosshatch here. Okay, I'm going to go all in one direction one way, and then I'm going to come back the other way. And you can do that in diamonds, you can do that in squares, etc. So my first line, and you'll notice I've only marked one line. I've used this is a 1/4 inch quilter's 1/4 inch tape. It's like a masking tape that is literally 1/4 inch wide, and it means you can just put it on and then take it off. So this is brilliant for this kind of thing, because it doesn't need to be removed as such, washed away or ironed away. You literally just peel it off. So for example, if I was doing a bag and I wanted to quilt the body of the bag, I mark my first line because I know that I have got this, and you may never have used this. This is the quilting bar that comes with the walking foot. You can also get a set, which I've just got as well, long quilting bar set. Okay, which are, well, the clue's in the name, they're longer. Okay, so if you are on a longer machine, a bigger throat space, these would be invaluable. But in this set you get left and right hand, so I think some people who are left-handed sometimes struggle a little bit when everything's on the sort of the other side, so to speak. But as I say, if you're on a much bigger project like a quilt, it means you can go much wider with the gaps between your actual stitches. So how this works is it just slots in the back. I'll put a little picture in of what I'm doing, and you just push it down, and then it is going to slide in and out. I've slotted that in the back here, and as I say, I'll put a little picture up there of what's going on at the back. And then I can just push it in and out. It'd be quite stiff, especially if it's a new one. And then this goes up or down according to when you want to use it and when you don't. Okay. So not only will it work for, I love this little bar, because not only will it work for quilting, but it's also really useful. You can use it for a hem guide, for example, or if you're doing a fancy stitch and you want it to be a much wider into the project, then this can be really useful for just guiding you along the side. So I'm going to lift it up now because my first row is marked. So I'm going to line up on here. I don't want to stitch on that tape because I'm going to get my needle sticky. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to line up, I'm hoping closer, there we go. I have lined up the edge of my tape with the edge of my walking foot here, because that's going to be much easier for me to see. And it's not a case of measurement at this point, because once I've done this line, everything is going to be measured from that stitch line, not this. So I'm just going to start walking down, and as I say, I am following the edge of my foot is on that tape. Keep your speed reasonable, don't rush at this. That's the easiest way to you know, get puckers and pleats and tucks and things into your quilting. Just keep a nice steady pace. I've gone off the foil a little bit there because I was checking the cameras with the right view. There we go. And don't push and pull. I'm on only a small piece here, and it's very easy when you're on a bigger project. On a bigger project, I would have my extension table on here and make sure it's all, the weight is taken either on the actual table or on a very big quilt, I would have it sometimes across my shoulder, or I have my ironing board to the side. It's, you know, personal preference. So once I've done that first line, I can take off that tape. I'll probably find it stuck to me later in the day. This is now my ditch. So what I can do now is I can maneuver this so I can get whatever width I want, and then I sit that in the ditch, and then I can start going along. There we go. So this is going to sit in the ditch of that line that I have just done. So I'm not watching the needle again, I'm watching what that bar is doing and making sure that I'm keeping that nice and lined up as it just wanders. Yeah, I suppose a wandering foot is quite a good name, isn't it, really? So as that just gently walks along. And what it means is that I can keep going, and every one of those lines will be equidistant. Okay, so as I say, don't hammer at it, but just keep things nice and steady, keep things nice and smooth as well. I'm going to take that pin out of the way. I am not a fan of stitching over pins. I know some people do, but I don't. A bit like using her dressmaking scissors for paper. That would have got me a smack across the back of the legs from my mother. So no stitching over pins, no using your fabric scissors for paper. Continue going in that direction, and then I can turn and go this way, so that now I'm in the ditch again there. So push it down and then start walking along there. But you can see how that's gonna really simplify life with that. But this cross hatching is done with this little fella here, and as I say, brilliant, because you only need to use that masking tape, so you don't have to mark it or pin it or anything, because I didn't want to actually damage the leather. So yeah, took a long time, but it is actually one of my most used bags, I must say. I'd like to say it was a Chanel kind of affair. So to do the cross hatching, I do exactly the same process. I can put this at whatever angle I want. So as I say, whether you want squares or diamonds, different shapes, start with that line and then use that bar again. Oops, I've moved it up, that bar again, to do nice even stitching either side. So that's looking rather fun, isn't it? And all I need to do is trim it up and then bind it. I'm not going to bind that today because I want to use a binder in a future video. So I'm thinking, oh, I can stack up a few samples for that one. But as I say, you don't think you just have to do straightforward quilting. Think a little bit outside the box sometimes, especially if you have got this sort of negative space going on. So very often I think everything is about rulers and free motion and everything, and that's lovely. But when you first start quilting, that can be really daunting. But there's actually a huge amount you can do with just a walking foot to get some more interest in your quilts. So this is a case in point. This is just going to be a mat to go under my other machine. What I've done here, and I definitely did go through this when I was looking at the hand look quilt stitch, you can buy various templates, etc. As you can see, it's a bit sort of Blue Peter here. I have lots of different shapes cut out for various things. I tend to use, because I do hand English paper piecing as well, things like this. This is what I've used along here, look, where I've actually drawn around it and then gone to the next one. And what I've done is, when you do that, you can then stitch safely along. You're basically just doing straight line, but you'll just pivot every time you get to a corner. And then I've gone back with the width of the foot so that I can get a second line, and what it's giving me is a big diamond there, and then a small diamond, big diamond, small diamond, big diamond. So interesting. I've done the same thing here by doubling that row. As I say, I could, I think down the bottom, look, I could have just done one lot of it, but because again I've done a double line, I've done that same thing where I've got a big, a small, a big, a small, which has added the interest. And then circles, same thing. This definitely was used in the middle of a circle. So I've used a cardboard, here we go, a cardboard circle. And I have done those so they join up. And again, what happens is that you can just walk all the way along here, curving gently as you go, and then you come back the other way, and that closes off your circle. And then I'm going to do a second line where again I go through, snaking along, and then I can come back. And that's literally, I start here and I go to the end and come round, and I stop here as well. So whenever you're doing quilting, you want to do as few stops and starts as you can, especially if you're on the walking foot, because it's going to make your life a lot easier. So that's just a little few ideas. The other type of quilting that is incredibly popular at the moment, especially in modern quilting and contemporary quilting, is what's known as matchstick quilting. And I'm going to fill this on this applique project. I'm going to fill these gaps between the trees with this quilting, just because sometimes what you'll find is if you're doing applique, the closer you do your quilting in between, it kind of makes your applique pop. So because I've got my backing on here and this is a quilt rather than just a little project, I'm going to start properly. I am going to hold my top thread. I'm going to drop my presser foot. I've actually lined the side of my presser foot up here against this top line of fabric here. I've got my needle position is in the center. I need it to be in the center so that as I'm going backwards and forwards, the needle is always the same distance. Okay, I've got my top thread in my hand and I'm just going to do the needle down, needle up, and then just gently tug so that I've got both my bobbin and my top thread there on the top, and I can get them out of the way. And then I'm going to put my needle down again so I know I'm in the right place, and then I can start. So as I walk along, I want to stop on the edge of this tree, so I'm slowing up and I'm going to use that needle up down just to do those two little stitches, because now I want to turn so that I can go back the other way. This is a quilt as you go project, so
luckily there's not a huge amount of quilt here, because what I want to do is I now want to walk down the side of this shape, and I'm going to count. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 stitches and then pivot. No, not quite. Can you see the side of the foot is not quite far enough over, so I'm going to do another stitch, pivot back, one more stitch. So I've taken 4 stitches, so I now know that every time I pivot I want to take 4 stitches. So put back down, off we go again. So I'm coming up to the edge of that tree, so one more stitch, that's fine, that's going to see me all right. And then I'm going to take those 4 stitches down the side. This is about half an inch apart, so some people do half an inch, quarter of an inch, 2, 3, don't forget to count, Julia, 4, here's that one, there we go, pivot, and I'm just squishing the quilt up. But look, can you see now I'm side on to that layer there, and off we go again. So as I say, you can see how this is going to sort of build up the lines in between, and we're just looking at in today's video at straight stitches, literally just the different effects you can get just using that bog standard straight stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, there we go. What is really key with this is to set your machine. If you're on a computerized machine, always make sure you set to finish with your needle down. It will show you in your instruction book, I'll put a little picture, how to do that, and that's normally the first thing I would do if I ever get a different machine in the sewing room. That's the first thing I check, is that it's set to finish with the needle down, because it means that it's not shifting, so I know exactly where it is. So I'm getting a very neat line as we go along here, so I can put that down, and there we go, I'm back on line and along we go. There we go. Pivot and go around up to this one, and that should do us. Going across just to hit there, and at that point I'm not going to do the lock off, because as I said, this is a quilt and I want the underneath to look neat. So in this case I will just do my needle up, and then I will actually make sure that I bring out enough thread top and bottom that I can then go back in and thread those all through. So I make sure I've got that, and that's quite important as well. So I don't use my scissors when I'm doing quilting, because I always want those long tails. Okay, so that's the one occasion where I do not use the scissor button. But let's spout so you can see a little bit better. But look, you can see there's just a little bit more definition. So there we go, quite a lot of information and a few ideas as well. And as I said, I've fished out a few samples. This was the one I was talking about, where I've done the sort of freehand waves across the quilting, this cushion. Again, I'll put the link below. We've done lots of different projects over time which have needed quilting. The project, as I said, this one, just to show you that one again, this very simple applique stars, I just literally bonder webbed some star shapes on and then just gone for it. This is going to be a table mat. I'm not finishing that because I want to do the binding foot in a future video, and a set of those would make fantastic opportunities to show you that foot as well. So that was, like I say, a fair bit going on in there, so hopefully it's given you some ideas. Any questions, as per usual, do pop them in the comments below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And if you want to give a little thumbs up if this is the kind of thing that you're enjoying,
and hopefully see you next time.